everyone, welcome back to my channel where we talk about travel and languages. And today I want to talk about Japanese Duolingo. I've already made a video on Spanish Duolingo, which I'll link up here. I did feel that these needed separate videos because they're very, very different and my opinion on them is very, very different. So I'll start with the pros like I did in my last video. However, it was really hard for me to think of very many pros for the Japanese Duolingo. And I know that they tried hard, to make this work, and I don't think it's entirely useless. So I don't want to say it's bad, because it's not bad. It's just not for me. So I'll explain a little bit, but let me first say some pros that do exist is the streak tracking function. So, I do really believe that it's important to build good language learning habits. I've made a video on that, which I'll also link up here. And that I do think is a really helpful tool to get into that habit. Another thing that I do like is how accessible it is. It's obviously free and on your phone, so you could just go and dabble in a language and see how you like it, and that's great. I really think that's great. If we're talking about serious language learning though, and someone wanting to get from zero to fluency, I see some problems with it. I used the Japanese Duolingo when it first came out and got through the whole thing pretty quickly and felt it was too easy and a little bit frustrating. Since then I've revisited it and I do think it's better. But someone who hasn't really used Duolingo much for Spanish specifically and is just entering in there at an already, high intermediate level is not going to enjoy it, I think, and not really get much from it. My main issue with it is that it is a very different language from English, but they're trying to present it to English speakers through osmosis and, we'll just see this example sentence and understand how to use this grammatical structure. That doesn't work, in my opinion, for this kind of a language. I had a different opinion about that for the Spanish one, but for Japanese, the lack of instruction and guidance on how to use different grammatical points in Japanese is really a hindrance, I think. I don't believe it's possible for someone to get to zero to even speaking level in Japanese solely using Duolingo. It doesn't explain the difference between hiragana and katakana. It doesn't explain kanji very well. It throws it in there, and it's nice to be able to start recognizing kanji from the start. However, I think that kanji needs some context because it's really important to be able to understand what it means, the symbol means, and then you have to also know the two different readings for it, or sometimes more. And that is super important because sometimes the same kanji is a different word depending on the sentence. So I feel like that really needs to be explained. Also, usage of particles super needs to be explained. Our English brains don't just automatically absorb the know-how for using particles in a sentence when that doesn't exist in English at all. When I went back and was kind of exploring Duolingo in Japanese again, it was kind of nice to have a way to basically use it as a flashcard system for my kanji, but it's hard to really challenge yourself because it makes the sound of the reading of the kanji when you click on it. So you know immediately if you're wrong. And yes, if you are being really hard on yourself and just clicking on it if you know the answer, then that's great. But I think it makes it a little too easy to just kind of space out and mindlessly go through it rather than really focusing and learning something from it. And speaking of the tiles, when you click on them too, sometimes it makes the wrong sound for the context that it's talking about because, as I mentioned before, kanjis have at least two different readings usually, so that can be a little confusing, especially if it never told you that the kanjis can have two different readings. So I know I've said a lot of negatives about Duolingo in Japanese, but I don't want someone to just think, well, I'm not gonna try it then. Because it is free and it might work for you to a certain extent, but here's how I would use it. If you are an absolute beginner, and you have access to no other language learning programs, then use it, but Google and look on YouTube or something, everything that you don't understand. Look into the grammar of Japanese on your own. And definitely look up the verb conjugation charts. You need those. If you already have some basic Japanese understanding and you know a little bit about the grammar and things like that, like you've maybe done a class on it, you can use it, but I think it will be a little bit easier for you to use Duolingo like this, but still there are always more advanced grammar that definitely needs explaining. There's some grammar that took me forever to learn and definitely a lot of practice to get used to. I really don't believe, based on my personal experience, that it's something that you can just attain through osmosis and, you know, see example sentences over and over again and suddenly know how to make those sentences. So I've talked about before my favorite way of studying Japanese. I'll link that up here, but just to kind of go over it, I use JapanesePod101.com because it's a podcast system where they review an entire conversation in Japanese, full context, and also with native Japanese speakers who explain every grammar point in detail and also go over all the new vocabulary words learned in that lesson. I find it so helpful. Also, being able to hear language in conversation form helps you to go on to be able to speak and have conversations of your own. And hearing native speakers talk about their language in their country really helps to further understand the culture behind the language that you're learning. I also really like HelloTalk. It's also a free app, and so I do really recommend it. At least use that with Duolingo, as well as Googling any other grammar points or vocabulary words that you don't understand. So in short, if you do choose to use Duolingo, don't let that be the main source of your learning, because you're going to end up not understanding or just missing some parts of the language learning that you really do need to be able to speak it. Let me know in the comments if you've tried the Japanese Duolingo and what were your thoughts on it. I know that I was being really hard on it here, but it's my honest opinion. It was my honest experience. And of course, that is not to say that I overall dislike Duolingo in general. I do think that it's better for other languages. It's just that they tried to do the same style of learning with a very different language, and I don't think it really worked too well. So please don't be too mad at me if you are a Duolingo fan. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.